Once again, Justin Trudeau shows us that he cannot answer even a single question correctly. He is not able to even defend his own ideas, and he was roasted by Pierre today in the House. Trudeau could not respond to anything. He looked so foolish. He continued to lie, as we know he always does. This video is so frustrating to watch because he just won't stop lying. But watching Pierre dunk on him is always fun, and Pierre had great information for his answers today. Before we get into that, I do also have a video on food security across Canada, a quick little update on that, because we are seeing some very interesting and concerning trends, so I wanted to talk about that. Obviously, both videos have a lot to do with the carbon tax. Speaking of which, the carbon tax store is live. We've got the hats, the shirts, the mugs, the stickers, whatever works. Again, only if you can afford it. It is just about spreading the message and having the conversation. Let's get into today's video.
We begin with some sobering numbers when it comes to food insecurity in Canada. In its annual report, the Food Banks Canada warning that we have reached a critical turning point as poverty and food insecurity worsen in every corner of the country. Canada received an overall grade of D-, a decline from the D last year. Only two provinces, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, managed to improve. The rest of the country stayed the same or got worse.
Sounds like Trudeau's high school report card.
CTV's Renee Rogers is following this for us today. And Renee, what does this new study tell us about hunger in Canada compared to previous years?
Hi, Roger. Well, it's no surprise that essentially what this tells us is that Canadians are worse off, for the most part, from coast to coast. That's according to Food Banks Canada's report card, which looks at the poverty situation province by province and also what governments are doing to address it. Now, some key findings in this report, Roger. Almost half of Canadians, or 44%, feel financially worse off now than they did last year.
That's crazy. Almost half is so many. And I mean, we're talking about food bank usage, and we've seen lots of information about people who have come to Canada, been abusing the food bank. This is an amenity, a service that is supposed to be serving local Canadians. And then we are seeing as the population grows, these people are not able to take care of themselves. They are relying on the food banks.
1 in 10 Canadians lives in poverty. Nearly a quarter are facing food insecurity, and food bank use has risen since 2021 by a whopping 50%.
What else has risen a ton since 2021?
Here is what the CEO of Food Banks Canada had to say.
When we think of Canada, we don't think that a quarter of the people, that includes neighbors, that includes people that go to our kids' schools, are, worried about where they're going to get access to fresh, healthy food. They're skipping meals. We hear all the time about parents who skip meals so their kids can eat. This isn't the Canada that any of us want.
No.
And Roger, Food Banks Canada says most governments are not responding with the urgency that is needed in this situation. It has a number of recommendations for Canada and then individual provinces. They range from an immediate groceries and essentials benefit to examining the potential for a national rent assistance program. Roger.
The problem with both of those things is they sound good at face value, but like we've talked about before, government spending makes these things worse. So if you add in giving people more money for groceries and giving people more money for rent, that's going to put more money into the system and inflate both of those things. It is not going to help with prices. So what do we need to do? Axe the tax, of course. Has nothing to do with the merch, but we do need to do that. We need to absolutely slash immigration, and we need to cut government spending, which is what I'm talking about, because when we keep these three things pumping the way that they are, this is going to keep happening. So I don't think we need more free government stuff. We need less, definitely less immigration.
Now, two provinces did improve. What are they doing?
Yes, so a couple of provinces did improve, and those would be Nova Scotia and PEI, Roger. They each improved from last year, and that's after those provinces put a greater legislative focus on poverty reduction and increasing the housing supply over the past year. But if you take a look at Quebec, a C+, that province is doing the best in the entire country. That includes poverty reduction.
PEI is still a D-. What were they before?
Efforts such as strong steps to increase housing, especially affordable housing, and strengthening the rights of people who rent. That's just a couple of things that have happened in Quebec. But still, this report says there is plenty of work to be done, both in Quebec and in the rest of Canada. And the report basically indicates, Roger, that without a major intervention, these grades are only expected to get worse.
The reason I wanted to show this one in particular is because we know carbon tax is an issue on food. We know that government spending is having a problem with this, and this sets us up for how asinine Trudeau's ideas are and his statements are in this next video. Let's get into it.
Prime Minister's wacko carbon tax obsession is costing Canadians not just at the pump, but it raises the cost of home heating, of groceries, because of course if you tax the farmer who produces the food and the trucker who ships the food, you tax all who buy the food. It's a housing tax because it raises the cost of building materials that go into homes. With the report out today that 25% of young people had to go to a food bank in just 3 months, will he accept the common sense Conservative bill to take the tax off the farmers who produce our food?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition continues to make that argument, even though he knows full well that farm fuels are 95% exempt from the price on pollution right across the country, Mr. Speaker. That is something that he ignores because of his ideological opposition to take any action in fighting climate change. Well, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you, in Conservative ridings right across the country, people are worried about droughts, people are worried about floods, people are worried about wildfires that are more and more severe. Canadians need a clean plan to fight climate change, which is something he hasn't put forward, while we are fighting climate change and putting money in people's pockets.
Trudeau is like a child. If you say one idea, that's all he can handle at a time. He goes 95% of farmers' fuels is exempt. It's not just the fuel. It's all of the things that are supplied to the farm. It's everything around there. It's the people who take the food from the farm and the deliveries they're charged for all these things. It's so many things that's not just the specific gas that the farmers use.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's carbon tax applies on barns, on grain drying, on fertilizers, on off-farm vehicles. It costs literally tens of thousands of dollars for many individual farmers, all of which gets passed on. But the Prime Minister, instead of defending his taxes, resorted to a really wacko and unhinged claim that if Canadians just paid more taxes, there would be suddenly less fires. I thought that water and not taxes put out fires. But maybe the Prime Minister can clarify, how high would his tax have to go for forest fires to stop?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are facing the impacts of the extreme weather events that come from climate change that are unfortunately getting worse and worse every year. That is why our government from 2015 onwards has stepped up in the fight against climate change, because not only are we reducing Canada's emissions to the lowest level outside the pandemic in 25 years, but we're also stepping up in the jobs and technological innovations that the world needs.
This guy, I don't know how he even pretends that he's getting in again. The guy knows that Canadians are starving. People don't care about the climate right now while we're trying to get people into homes and so that we can get food into children's mouth without having to increase government spending. And he's going, oh no, everybody cares about this. It's like, ugh.
To successfully fight climate change. We will continue to fight climate change, Mr. Speaker, and put more money in people's pockets while he sits with his arms crossed and no plan.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He didn't answer my question. Now he says that his taxes are going to make Canada a high-tech wonderland. Before, his claim was that it was going to stop forest fires. It's him that made the link, not me. Obviously, I think the link between the two is absolutely ridiculous because his tax is not an environmental plan. It's a money-collecting plan. It's a plan of government greed. So I'll ask the question again. He wants to hike the tax to 61 cents a litre. If it gets to that high and people are all starving in the streets, will that stop the forest fires?
The thing that Pierre's really good at is he actually listens to what Trudeau has to say and then uses it in his next statement. Trudeau just has talking points. The guy has no idea what he's doing. He's not a wordsmith by any means. So I will say, to Pierre's credit, as critical on him as I can be sometimes, he's really good at taking what Trudeau says and then turning it into a counterpoint.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in the Leader of the Opposition's desire to make clever rhetorical points, he actually completely ignores the basic facts.
In his desire to make clever rhetorical points, you mean make a cohesive statement, a point, a retort to your horrible statements? Like, jeepers.
The price on pollution is revenue neutral for the federal government. That means the money that comes in for the price on pollution, for the carbon tax, gets returned to the jurisdictions, and is why the parliamentary budget officer found 8 out of 10 Canadian families in jurisdictions where the carbon price applies do better with the Canada carbon rebate that comes in 4 times a year.
He's going to repeat that lie a million times until he dies, probably. 8 out of 10 where it applies. That means you don't include the areas where it doesn't apply, which means that is not 8 out of 10 Canadians. It would drop instantly based on their baseline numbers to like 5 out of 10 Canadians, because you have to include BC, pretty high populous province. And then you know that their baseline models are messed up, and it's like your baseline models and calculations are wrong, and you're not including actual people who are not getting it. It's like, oh, maybe 8 out of 10 isn't true.
Then the price on pollution costs them. That's a plan to fight climate change and put money in people's pockets.
That's crazy.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to be too clever for the Prime Minister, but he's the one who made the argument that high taxes would stop forest fires, and now he can't tell us how high the tax would go to put all the fires out. He went on now to say that his tax is revenue neutral. Well, you don't have to be too clever to read the government's own published documents, which shows that he has collected $2 billion more in taxes than he's given back in rebates. That's why 100% of middle-class Canadians pay more than they get back. So once again, will he tell those middle-class people how high the tax would have to go for the fires to stop?
Trudeau self-identifies as not reading the papers he's given and not understanding numbers. So of course he's not going to be able to see about the surpluses. But again, we had that election in 2021 and we just had the worst conservative leadership back then. Who the heck is Aaron O'Toole? Why was he ever? That guy was a coward. He was a loser. Absolute loser. Why was he in charge? Trudeau was set up to lose in 2021, and we put forward the weakest guy we had in the Conservative Party. And again, I'm very critical of Pierre. He is not against immigration in the way that we need it to be cut. If anything, he's pro-immigration, so I'm going to keep that ready, because I know a lot of you say, oh, he's going to be anti-immigration after he wins the election. We all know he's going to win, and we want him to win, but I'm going to be busting his chops if he's not cutting immigration. I still want to give him all the credit. I think he would have won in 2021. I certainly do. If he was the Conservative leader at the time, he just speaks so much better.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we just saw is climate denialism at its finest. The fact is, as global emissions rise, as carbon intensity in the atmosphere increases, extreme weather events like wildfires, droughts, and floods will simply become more and more frequent. Now, his plan is to do nothing, Mr. Speaker, and let future generations fend for themselves. Our plan is not only to reduce our emissions, but to create the solutions that the world needs while we lead on fighting climate change, bringing down emissions, and growing the economy.
Not only did he, again, not answer the question, 2, he did not actually use anything Pierre said in his argument. He doesn't understand how to articulate any of his own ideas. It's always just talking points. But don't forget the Axe the Tax stores down below. I am a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below if you want to work with me or my team all the way across Canada. Thank you so much for watching. It really does help a ton. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.